So I was in the process of making this video on cooking another recipe, and then I realized I had actually reached a point that I didn't think I would get to at this point in my journey. I've got potatoes going, old, you gotta clean, cutting board, dishes. I just gotta stop. I had burned out. What is a hobby? A hobby is supposed to be one of those activities that you do for enjoyment. You kind of do in your free time. You talk about it with your friends. You don't do it for any sort of reward. You know, that was something really difficult for me growing up. I kind of grew up as a workaholic to engross myself in work because I didn't want to deal with a lot of other things in my life. So really to understand what it meant to relax was a difficult term for me. And it happened once when I was getting my bachelor's. My instructors were asking me what I was going to do for the winter weekend, and I was literally stumped, like I don't know. I don't have any hobbies to do. So I kind of did away with the word hobby. And I think it's easier for those of us that have a difficult time trying to find those hobbies to just look at it as an activity. Just like everything else that we do in life, every single thing that we do is an activity. But it falls somewhere on these continuum of things that an activity does for us. One is it something that you enjoy doing? Activities that we enjoy doing could be video games, playing board games, or it could be the mundane tasks that we don't really enjoy doing. This. I've been waiting for weeks for this to come in, and I kind of knew it would take that long since it was coming all the way from Japan. Kind of be an addition and an upgrade to a hobby that I have. And it's one of those hobbies that I think a lot of people would find kind of weird, kind of cool. I really don't know, but I do think it would benefit pretty much everyone since it has to do with stuff that we really kind of do more often than not every week. Needless to say, I'm really glad I got into this one. An activity can cost us money. You know, if we are doing a hobby like filming, where we need lights or a microphone or a lens, that can be pretty expensive. Or it could be a free thing, like going to the park, the beach, maybe it just costs a little bit of gas. An activity can pique your curiosity. Are you intrigued in it? Are you interested to learn more about it? Or does it seem just very dull and uninteresting to you? Part of that perfectionism is wanting to know every single detail that I can get my hands on and trying to understand it the best I can, but I've been doing it in English. And then to figure out that I could probably explain the same thing in 10 seconds of film, that's what keeps me going and my curiosity. So even as I get into this more and more, I'm realizing there's more that I need to learn. There was one day I was filming myself building this, which is to help bounce the light or diffuse the light. And as I was doing it, a day later, I realized that I had been shooting in 30 frames per second and filming in the same mode that the camera came in when I should have been filming in log. And I should be switching to 24 frames per second because it's more cinematic that way. You can get more mood out of it, out of the camera. So all that footage is just gone. I have to start over. Does it have a steep learning curve? Does it take a lot to learn? This whole filming thing, you can understand the little bit of editing, or then you can understand the effects of color grading and how to get effective lighting and exposure in the film. That could then lead to burnout. It's literally my first time filming on location in the bright sun. No idea if this is going to be exposed, but I guess this is part of the learning process, right? And especially when you get so burned out that little ramen and Vietnamese iced coffee can't cure for me. Is it an activity that you idolize? That you think, oh, if I get into this, maybe I'm going to get some sort of recognition that I've always wanted, or some sort of attention. And that's a real interesting transition point, because once you try to make a hobby into a career, you start to have to wear different hats, like being a manager or being an entrepreneur, understanding how to change it into today's society and how it evolves over time. And once you start engaging in that hobby and trying to turn it into something more, there's a little bit of grief that goes along with it. Because as you transition into a career, that thing that you idolized starts to die, that idea that you had, and it starts to feel empty without it. You start to miss it. So we have the stages of grief, obviously. There's the denial, bargaining, anger, depression, acceptance. It could go in any of those orders. But then there is also the tasks of mourning. And it was developed by the same guy who created the stages of grief. We have to accept the loss of that idea of the hobby that we once had. We have to really process that grief. We have to understand the feelings of grief that came with it, the emotions. We then have to shift our energy from that thing that we enjoyed doing towards something else in our environment. We have to start to re-engage with the environment and accept that the environment that we're now in is an environment without that idea of that hobby that we had. And then maybe we shift that energy we gave to that idea towards something else. Maybe we have to find a new hobby to idolize, a new activity. And the thing that sucks is that there's no real good manual on this. We're all kind of stuck trying to figure it out on our own. Maybe a hobby is just something you do in your free time that's just opposite of what your profession is. There it is. Is your hobby a part of your life? Or is it a break from it? Maybe a hobby is a solo activity that you just do for yourself, that you don't have to tell anyone else about. Or maybe you only get into a hobby just to be around, your friends, to socialize. Whatever it is, whatever that activity is, hopefully it gives you information about yourself. It lets you know where you need to grow, how to grow. Teaches you new skills that you didn't think you could ever learn. Maybe it tells you what you're scared of, what you need to dive into head first, and really face that fear in a semi-safe space of that hobby. Maybe a hobby is a thing that just gives you space to relax, to where you're not trapped in your head and so worked up on doing something for a paycheck or for a reward of some kind. Whatever it is, whatever activity you identify with, find the time and be proud of the progress you made and recognize where you can grow and improve upon it and keep improving. Enjoy the process. Don't worry about the end result. Maybe that's the point of a hobby.